It's the real news. I'm Ben Norton. The major Indian state of Karnataka held its legislative assembly election on May 12th, and India's far-right Hindu-nationalist ruling party, the Bharatiya Janata Party, known by the acronym BJP, dominated the vote. The BJP won 104 seats, while the Indian National Congress won 77 seats, and the local state party, JDS, Janata Dal Secular, won 37 seats. Karnataka is a massive state with more than 60 million people, and many analysts said whoever wins this state in this election will likely win the general election in India in 2019. In response to the election results, BJP National General Secretary Ram Madhav declared that the far-right party's southward march had begun. Joining us to discuss this is Prabir Purkayastha. Prabir is the founder and editor of the website NewsClick. Thanks for joining us, Prabir.
Thanks, Ben.
So can you analyze these results, please? Are you surprised that BJP did so well, and why do you think Congress lost seats?
Well, let's first get some of the other statistics over here. That BJP actually had 2% less votes than the Congress, but it did have many more seats. Congress has lost seats, BJP has gained seats, but it is not commensurate to the vote figures that they have. So in this case, what we have to say is that Congress had relatively more distributed votes, but because JDS and Congress contested against each other, therefore they actually did not get commensurate with the vote proportion, the number of seats. While BJP, which had contested across the state, but had concentrated strength in certain pockets, therefore got really more seats. I would say that in that sense, this is not really a victory for the BJP and a huge, shall we say, southward march. BJP had actually won Karnataka about 5 years back, 10 years back. So this, in that sense, is not the first time they are in the reckoning. What we have instead is really a hung assembly. But JDS and Congress have come together and have staked their claim to form the government. Unfortunately, the governor has called BJP to form the government with a minority, while JDS and the Congress put together have a majority. So in that sense, now we have to see that in the horse trading that may take place right now, but the BJP can buy some of the MLAs, if not to side with it, at least to be absent, and therefore secure an artificial majority, as it were, in spite of the fact that they have lost the elections, in the sense that they have not got a majority. Yes, they have gained ground in terms of the last elections, but the last election was also in the context they had a dismal performance as a government. Their chief minister was found to be extremely corrupt, and this is true that this time as well it's the same chief ministerial candidate, and a lot of the corrupt figures which had been widely perceived to be sheltered by the BJP leadership have really come back to BJP. Though they haven't done well in the elections, at least those corrupt sections which are called the Bellary brothers and their, shall we say, really family and friends have not done well. They got the BJP, though they got the BJP ticket. So I think I would still say it's a mixed results. At the moment, what we do see is that the governor is playing a role which is not expected of a constitutional authority. He's a BJP man and he's supporting the BJP in terms of forming the government. And this, in some sense, is a violation of the constitutional propriety of calling the majority, those who can form a majority, have a majority in the assembly, not calling them to form the government. This is one part of it. Is it true that this is an indicator that the BJP will do in the 2019 elections? I do not really think so, because Karnataka, in spite of what you said, 60 billion, in Indian terms, 60 billion is not as big a figure as it might appear. You have UP, which is far bigger than this. You have a number of states which are much bigger than this. And what we will see also is a mini general election in a couple of months, in which 3 states are going to go to polls. And that will probably be a more clear indicator, because they're all in the north, and this is going to decide which way BJP's fortunes are going to go. So I do not think that this can be counted as a clear, shall we say, victory for BJP. It is not. I would say that the Congress has lost ground in terms of seats, though it hasn't lost ground in terms of votes. In fact, interestingly, Congress has got more votes this time than they did last time. So this therefore is, I would not call either a southward march for the BJP or consider this as a precursor to the 2019 general elections.
Yeah, those are important correctives. Of course, many media outlets tend to be hyperbolic about these kinds of things to sell copies, to get more readers. And of course, BJP, for its own political gain, tried to claim victory, but you raised several important points there. So, can we analyze why do you think that Congress isn't doing better at a time when demonetization, the policy carried out by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, was a complete disaster? When there are all these horrific scandals, rape scandals involving members of BJP in Kathua, up in Kashmir, and other parts of the country. Why do you think Congress and other parties, specifically left-wing parties, are not doing better?
Well, one part of it is yes, Modi still has some credibility, even though it's a waning one at the moment in India. It is also true that while the Modi government faces anti-incumbency in terms of its failed policies, in terms of all that you've described, it's also true that the Congress ran Karnataka for 5 years. And though it did give certain kinds of, shall we say, uh, help facilities to the poor, nevertheless, their ability to retain their seats also shows that Congress is not as strong in electioneering, as it were, or strategically doing the elections as the BJP is. And I would say there is a huge element of the kind of money that BJP has collected. It's outspent its rivals by 4:1, 5:1 in these elections. And a lot of the money is also not visible today because it comes in with the equivalent of the super PACs in the US. It's not really connected, or it's not really shown up, showed as election expenses. And a lot of that goes to strategize, do a Cambridge and Analytica equivalent in terms of micro-targeting of voters, identify which seats they need to swing in order to get a majority. So it's that kind of, shall we say, more modern election tactics, if you will, not the mass politics that we are familiar with. And I think that's where BJP has a decisive edge. It is true that as the BJP and Modi, shall we say, electoral capital is dwindling. But as I said, the Congress also has its own problems, and therefore that itself, by itself, does not give them that edge. But I do think that in the north, where they have also incumbents, BJP is incumbent parties over there. Most of the states, BJP has been running this for 10, 15, 1, 2 years. I think you will see a much sharper swing against the BJP because the central government's incumbency and the state government's incumbency will go both against the BJP. Coming to the left, I think we have to understand that in Karnataka, left has always been very weak. So therefore, that should not be taken as a criteria. And we had also, the left as a whole has decided that in places where it does not have too much to gain in terms of seats, it will prefer to put up a few candidates and then support whoever can defeat the BJP in these constituencies. And therefore, that electoral tactics of the left means that they will only contest for a large number of seats where they have strength. Otherwise, they would really strategize to defeat the BJP rather than try to get, ephemeral or, minor electoral victories. Again, Karnataka, we have traditionally didn't hold the seat. We used to hold one about 10 years back. We are coming second there. We have come second this time also. I think that this is sort of for the left. Karnataka has never been particularly strong. But I do think that secular democratic forces in Karnataka did come together to fight the BJP. And that's one of the reasons that BJP has not done as well as it thought it would in terms of votes.
Yeah, and in terms of the attack on the left that's been ongoing by BJP, and not just attack in terms of the actual physical attacks organized by RSS forces and other hyper-nationalist forces. We'll get to that after this question, but I'm curious. Of course, Karnataka is not the only example. We saw in February in Tripura that the Communist Party, Marxist, the CPM, was handed a pretty resounding defeat by BJP in what had traditionally been a left stronghold. So if we take a step back and look at the general politics of India, and we can see, unfortunately, a rise in these far-right nationalist forces, and we can see a weakening in, as you mentioned, leftist secular forces. So taking a step out of Karnataka and looking at the nation as a whole, why do you think BJP is dominating in parts that had traditionally been left strongholds like Tripura?
Well, Tripura is a very small state, and there are limitations what a state government can do in terms of creating employment, providing facilities, partly because it's also, in terms of logistics, it's also a state which is very difficult in terms of communications, transport, etc. So a government running there for 20 years also has this anti-incumbency issue that it has not done, created more jobs, has not done more, etc., etc. And the fact that it has really pulled up the population in terms of education and other facilities does not go to, shall we say, circumvent the problem of creating employment, and particularly for the middle class. Yes, it's also true that there is today a rising tide of what I will call hate politics, in which we certain sections assert that being Indian means minorities must be suppressed. Secular forces are anti-national. Left is anti-national. And this hyper-nationalism, as you have called it, combines with this religious identity politics, if you will, which is the Hindutva politics. It's not religious politics, but it's really religious identity politics masquerading as religion. And this combined with nationalism is a discourse we need to defeat. If we can't defeat this, if we can't say that this is what is not nationalism for India, it's not nationalism for the people, but it's really nationalism of the rich. And it's the nationalism of the upper segments of society, including the upper caste. As you know, there are serious caste divisions in the country. Unless we can break that, shall we say, narrative of the right, then we will find, as secular forces or as left forces, left democratic forces, we will find that we will not be able to defeat the BJP. In this, we also need to think about what is the economic program that BJP takes, and that's where they are at the moment the weakest, which is how they're trying to really counter by not talking about what they haven't done and what they have delivered, but instead talking about how we are becoming strong, we are able to fight Pakistan, we are suppressing all dissent, which is anti-national. So this hyper-nationalist narrative is being really set against what I will call a development and a democratic narrative. And don't forget, BJP or Modi came into power on the basis of being a development person. He identified himself with development and said, Congress has not developed the country, I will. Those promises are no longer what he's talking about. Instead, his basic refrain has been an anti-nationalist should be defeated. If the Congress wins, if the left wins, this means Pakistan will win, China will win, etc., etc. So these kind of narratives need for us to combine the economic issues, the economic agenda, with also the political, social, secular, social agenda. And how to bring this together is really the challenge we face.
We'll have to end our discussion there. I'm Ben Norton. I was here with Prabir Purkayastha. We were discussing the politics in India and the election in Karnataka, which happened on May 12th. Thanks for joining us, Prabir.
Thank you.
Reporting for The Real News, I'm Ben Norton.